Well, you already know I've been brewing kombucha for a year because first I did it because I kind of liked kombucha, but I really didn't like spending $5 a bottle. And also, I don't like fizzy things. So that didn't really make kombucha my go-to drink. Then I found out you could do it yourself. And I started doing it. So, quick overview. There are basically 3 steps. The first step is getting yourself a SCOBY and starter liquid. Okay, so kombucha is just fermented tea. So you take tea, you make really strong tea, sweet tea, you put in this starter liquid in SCOBY and they ferment it. Then, so the first thing is you got to have the SCOBY and the starter liquid. We'll go back to that. The second step is you make a batch of kombucha using your SCOBY and starter liquid and more water and more tea. And then the fun part is towards the end, once this has marinated enough to become the way you like it to taste, then you get to flavor it. So that's exciting. So let's start with number 1. I'm going to scare the crap out of the cats. I can tell. They're like, oh, sugar or something. Sorry. Okay. So here is what they call a SCOBY hotel, where if you have extra SCOBYs, you kind of see them. Don't they look cute? Just lying down there. So those are all extra SCOBYs in SCOBY liquid or starter liquid. So if you have a friend, and for today's purposes, if you can get to my house in Leisure World, I will be your friend who has extra SCOBYs and starter liquid. You can just get a couple cups of the liquid and a SCOBY from them, and this is handled. If not, then you can make your own SCOBY. It's basically the same process as making your first batch of kombucha, so I'm not going to go into it. It's in the handout. It's just like make the first batch of kombucha, but half the size. So, boom, step 1 is done. Step 2. So you've got this, and what do you need to make your first batch? You need sugar, water, black tea initially, and 2 cups of the starter. So what kind of sugar? Any kind of sugar, pretty much. No, you can't use honey. That's a different drink. No, you can't use sweet and low. You can't use any of those non-nutritive sweeteners. It's got to be sugar. So I use organic cane sugar from Roots, but you can use 5 pounds in a bag for $2 from Giant. It's totally up to what your tastes are. And then the tea. As far as the tea is concerned, I get this Newman's Own organic black tea in the family tea bags, which are really awesome because the family tea bags are equal to 4 regular tea bags. And a first batch of kombucha takes 8 tea bags. So you can see why there's a whole lot less wrapping and throwing away papers and stuff. So these are nice for that. As far as the tea is concerned, you want to stick with black tea or green tea. I recommend starting with black tea because it's got more of something that makes the SCOBY healthier and oathier. And eventually you can go to all green if you want. SCOBYs and the starter liquids can start to kind of lose their zip at some point, in which case more black tea might be a good idea to try as an alternative. There are other ways to get some zip back into your SCOBY, but we will worry about that later. Okay, so tea, sugar. I wasn't going to bring a gallon of water in here. Imagine a gallon of water in a big old jar. So I already decanted this batch. So all that's left in the bottom of here is my starter liquid and the SCOBY that it made while I was preparing it. So basically, some instructions will tell you to boil 13 to 14 cups of water, add your 8 bags of tea and your cup of sugar, and wait for it all to cool down. You don't really have to do that. You can boil a quart of water, add your cup of sugar, mix it all up, and put in your 8 bags of tea and let that cool down. It takes a whole lot less time and cuts a lot of time off of your SCOBY prep. SCOBY prep. So what I do is I do a quart with the sugar and the 8 bags of tea. I put it out in the porch in the winter, let it cool down, and then come back in and take the SCOBY. This is kind of optional. Because I do continuous brewing, I don't actually take my SCOBY out, but you could. So you can just kind of go in there. Oh boy. And grab a SCOBY. And if this is the one SCOBY in your jar, SCOBY, up close, personal. It looks like cellulose because it is cellulose. You take that out, whoops, and put it aside in a dish. And then you pour all your other stuff in here, leaving 2 cups of starter liquid in here. So you take out the SCOBY, but you leave in the starter. And put a lid on it. Now, it has to be a porous lid, so you could use old t-shirt fabric. You can buy one for $13 off the internet. You can sew your own, because how hard is it to cut up an old t-shirt and make a circle? Not that hard. I did it. Can't be that hard. Or you can do this, which is coffee filters. I have 3 layers of coffee filters here. You can't put on a metal lid or something like that, a plastic lid, because the SCOBY has to breathe. So I find that the coffee filters work really well. You don't want to use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth bad, because cheesecloth will do nothing to keep out a fruit fly. Fruit flies love SCOBY or love kombucha. They love kombucha. So you want something really nice and tight to keep the fruit flies out and dense. So we've done that. What do we do now? We put this someplace, in the winter I'm going to say you put it someplace warm. It likes to be between 75, 85 degrees. So what I do is I wrap mine up in a very old heating pad. I have another one where you can actually buy a kind of like a heater, but a round heater thing that just fits on your bottle. You can put it on with a rubber band and it heats it up. They're not that expensive. So after you've done a few things, if you really like it, yeah, it's a decent investment. I have my continuous brew, which is in a big crock with a spigot. I have a continuous brew wrapped in one of those. The warmth is important because it keeps it growing. So in the summer, you might not need the extra heat. In the winter, most of us do, because most of us aren't heating our houses up that hot. Okay. And if you don't want it to take 14 to 21 days to ferment, bump it up with a little heat and make sure your starters. Okay. What I didn't say is the one thing that can really go wrong when you're making kombucha is mold. Nobody likes mold. And if you look at the kombucha sites, that's the biggest question. People are putting photos of their SCOBYs going, is that mold? Is that mold? Is that mold? So the best way to not get mold is just cleanliness. Generally, in between batches, I will run boiling water into my containers and my bottles, let them drain, keep the lid covered so that nothing's getting in while they're drying. And that has been adequate for the purposes of keeping it clean and unmolding. You don't want to use metal implements or plastic implements. Metal, stainless steel is cool, but other metals, they leach. You don't want that. And plastics, also not good because, well, they leach also, and they leach things into your drink. You know, the metal, I think, is more your drink is going to mess up the container, but the plastics are going to mess up you. Little commercial. All righty. Okay. The SCOBY, big one, buy one. You can order them on Amazon. There's lots of ways to get them. You can order them from Kombucha Mama, all kinds of. So here we are. We put in our 14 cups of water. We put in our 1 cup of white sugar, yes, sugar. We put in our 8 bags of caffeinated tea. Black, green, white oolong, not like Earl Grey, any of the teas that have an oil in them, like the bergamot or bergamot in Earl Grey. You don't want those. That oil gets into your SCOBY and it can change the whole taste of your future batches. So kind of plain teas. You can use bags. You can use loose teas. If you message me through the Time Bank, I will send you a lovely little thing that I did up last night that says how much the size of your container, how much water, how much sugar, how much starter. I, of course, cannot find that thing right now, but yeah, I will send that to you and that will give you a really good guide. Let's see. Okay, equipment. At this point, we've got a 1 gallon glass jar or food grade ceramic jug. Okay, a tightly woven fabric, rubber band or something like that to fasten the cloth on the jar and keep it happy. So we covered up we talked about how to do this faster. I am not going to be able to read whatever's coming in. Okay. Letting it cool to room temperature, pouring everything into the jar, covering the jar, and sitting it someplace for, say, 6 to 10 days. After about day 6, you want to test it. So all you do is you take a straw, and if you want to use a metal straw and you want me to be your friend, I have a lot of these that I can also spare along with the SCOBY and the starter fluid. So you just kind of stick that down and put it in a little cup. And you want to first just taste it. That's good. It's getting tart. It's still sweet. It should have a little oomph to it. My first batches, I was so nervous that as soon as it hit like a pH of 3.5, I was like, okay, I better bottle it now. Not so. It's nice to have a little more tart. So I just did that by taste and know that I'm ready. Well, I already bottled it, but I would have been ready to bottle it. The other thing that you can do, and I recommend this for nervous beginners, as I was, is get kombucha test strips. Again, I get these on Amazon. You have to be careful. Read the reviews. This particular one is Kombucha Chemistry, and I hope you can see it. And this is a good one because it measures the strips in 0.5 degrees. There are some that say they do that, but they actually measure it in like 2 or 3 big blocks like this, and they are useless to you. I hear that winemakers get it down to even closer, so you might like that. So we have a test strip. Hopefully I didn't drink too much. I stick the test strip in the liquid, let it sit for 2 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, and then compare it. I can barely see this, so you can't, but you compare it to these colors, and they will tell you where you are acidity-wise. This one's at about a 2.5, which is really good for me for drinking. Okay, so now we have an empty, but formerly a big jug of kombucha, and that's the kombucha. At this point, you got kombucha. Now we get to the fun part, and that is flavoring the kombucha. Okay, there are like a million ways to do that. There are as many flavors of kombucha as there are brains in the world. People have made coffee kombucha, mocha coffee kombucha. I'm a little boring. I stick with the fruit. So to do your flavorings, you can use fruit. You can use a jelly, but make sure it is not a jelly or jam that has preservatives, because they will probably screw up your brew. So you don't want this. But something that's like the fruit, sugar, maybe a little citric acid, should be fine. Honey. This is Apatera raw honey with lemon and ginger. Fabulous, fabulous flavoring. Or just plain old organic raw honey. All of them are fine. So what I do, I'm a little lazy and I do not want to worry about trying, if you chop the fruit up and put it in the bottle, it looks really cute, unless you're using beer bottles like me. But if you put it in the clear bottle, it looks adorable. Very cool, especially if you're using like hibiscus or something, so it's red and so cute. However, then you got to get that stuff out of the jar. I don't understand it. I'm way too lazy. So this is what I do. I go to the store, I find a fruit that I like this happens to be the remains of a really ripe pineapple. I bring it home and I put it in my blender. And so this was fresh pineapple and I added a lot of ginger. I chopped up some nice fresh ginger, put that in there too, and ended up with really nice zingy kind of flavor. I like zingy, okay? The other batches that I have made this week, I did a cranberry apple, which was basically, I got cranberries, I cooked them down, whizzed them up, strained them because cranberry skins don't like to dissolve, strained them, and then I added some, not apple juice, apple cider, which had started to go bad, which meant it had fermented, which made it perfect. So that gave me cran apple. It was so good. After the course today, I'm going to be making up some mango banana, which I can tell already from what I've got, I'm not delighted with it, but it's not bad. So mango banana kind of made it a little blah. So I added more ginger. People add sriracha. People add lemon zest. Lemon zest is very nice. Or just lemon juice. So 1 million ways to flavor it. Any kind of thing you like. Did any questions come up about the flavoring? Because I could address them now.
Not on the flavoring per se, Christine, but Alan is asking, when you're referring to batches, do you mean this week and you're doing a batch a week?
Well, it's hard to actually get a batch a week done because this generally takes closer to 10 days, maybe 7. But yeah, I do multiple batches. I have one really big crock that for the first time I've got 2 gallons going in it, and I will be decanting that. But that's a continuous brew. With continuous brew, a continuous brew for me would do 14 beer bottles. But the concept would be that I would take off 7 beer bottles and do what I was going to do with them, replace the liquids, and then in just a few days, because there's still 7 beer bottles worth of good kombucha as starter, in just a few days, I'd be ready to take off more. This guy, he's a one-time shot. So you take him, I labeled everything out. I saved this little bit down the bottom for the next batch. I hope that answered your question, but how much you make depends on how much you drink. And 7 beer bottles worth of kombucha is not a lot. That's 1 a day. So that's why I'm upping my yield. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Everybody is really enjoying it, Christine.
Thank you. I'm glad. Okay, so flavorings, anything else about flavorings? Yeah, okay. So frequently asked question is the quantity. And I find that what I like is, I'm using a 2-cup bottle, 2 tablespoons of whatever my fruit blend is, or if it's straight honey, which I don't do, but if it's straight honey, 2 teaspoons per bottle, or 1 tablespoon per 8 ounce. Okay, I think this is written in the instructions. So I already said I puree. Oh, you also could use, if you like, so you get some fruit and you puree it up and it's like, oh, this is so, add some maple syrup, add some brown ginger, add some lemon zest. Lemon zest is beautiful. Anything to get the intensity up on your base flavoring. Okay, are we ready to move on to bottling? I think so. Okay, so now we talk bottles. There's a lot of ways to do bottles. I found a guy on Facebook who was selling Beast beer bottles, and I went and got them. Because you want, especially if you like fizzy drinks, you want an airtight seal. If there's any air coming into a bottle, like if you reuse a kombucha bottle from the grocery store, which you can do, but if you don't tighten them up really tight, you could have not such fizzy stuff. And I do find these split bottles. You can get them on Amazon. You can sometimes find them on Facebook, Marketplace, whatever. And when you're filling them, again, the big question is how much fizz do you want? I want 0 fizz. So I take all my bottles and I put in my fruit mixture in each one. It's very simple. Tablespoon, funnel, tablespoon, funnel, pretty easy. And then I fill the bottle. I fill it up to about here, like the bottom of the neck. Again, I don't care if it's fizzy, so I don't want to make it any higher. And then I throw it in the fridge. If you're into fizzy, then you've got a different thing going. Because one thing you have to remember about fizz, my mother canned, and every once in a while we would come home and there would be peaches everywhere that were still supposed to have been in a bottle, or in a mason jar, but weren't anymore. So let's see. Let's say you are going to be using mostly these bottles, or even these, and you don't want to keep opening them up to see how their fizzy is. Take one sacrificial plastic bottle. Okay, it's kind of squishy. You fill it with your mixture, and put it in with your other bottles that are fermenting. When this guy gets rock hard, you have got plenty of fizz in the rest of these bottles, and you might want to start burping them. Just a little open with burp. What else about bottling? Well, I hate to belabor the obvious, but they can explode, and it is messy. I mistakenly one day decided, oh, I've got some strawberry ones. I'm just going to let them sit at room temperature for a couple days, and didn't think about it, and picked one up and started shaking it vigorously because I can shake my kombucha because it doesn't have fizz. Went to open it, up goes the spray, goes all the way to the end of my kitchen, goes up over all the cabinets, across the ceiling, down behind me, into my refrigerator. I still haven't figured that one out. It was closed. In the refrigerator, I find kombucha, back on the oven behind me, and there's a pièce de résistance. I found a big blob of SCOBY over in my dining room. Be careful. One thing to do when you don't know where you stand, and I'm sorry I don't have the right prop, is take a big plastic bag and a container of some sort underneath, a bowl, a big cup, like a 4-cup measuring cup or something like that. Put the bag over the top, flip up the lid, and then just see what happens. If it's going to be gentle about it, then you're good. It could just start overflowing, in which case this will catch it. If it explodes, then God willing, the plastic bag will catch it. Excuse me. Okay. All righty.
This is Kathy jumping in. I'm just giving you a time check that we're at 3:25.
Okay. Dip bottles, leave them 3 to 10 days, depending on how fizzy you want them, reading the heat, depending on how fizzy you want them again and how fast you want them to get fizzy. I can be done and take questions.
All right. So I think you pretty much answered what everybody had. If people want to enter some more into the chat, they're welcome to, but you got a lot of compliments. They love the presentation and people are eager to try out kombucha themselves.
It's very fun, and it's so fun to like make your own flavors. It's really cool. I recommend it highly. Sorry, Kim.
So I was going to ask about the cleaning up of the strawberry kombucha all over your, how long did that take you?
Hours. Really? Because I kept finding more. I kept thinking, well, I've gone as far as it went. And then, oh no, there it is. Another 3 feet further. There it is.
So
But
great.
the most,
Oh, I was going to say great precautionary tale.
yes. Do be careful. And that wasn't so bad because at least I was opening the bottle.
Until she's done.
In circumstances, they can go bad and break the bottles. Okay. How long can you
Do continuous brew.
That's totally up to you if you're careful. I mean, I've been continuous brewing for 6 or 8 months. I've changed out scobies. As long as you're careful with everything at each step, your hands are clean, your utensils are clean. I think it could just be indefinite. What was the other thing about that? Oh well.
Well, while you're thinking of that, another question popped up.
How long bottles last in the fridge?
Portion last in the fridge.
Well, in my house, they last 1 per day.
Mm-hmm.
I never have enough to go, so I know they will last a week to 10 days easily, but they will last a lot longer.
And I just want to read off the previous question since some people on Facebook Live can't see the chat. And she was answering Laura saying, how long can you do continuous brew without risking mold? So that's what she was answering before. And maybe talk about the cost a little bit.
The cost is interesting. So this bottle from GTS full of kombucha, $3.50 to $5 depending on where you buy it. This bottle filled with my kombucha, 35 cents. Now you have to figure, and that did figure in my initial costs of buying the glass bottle. This sugar I think is $9.99 for, because I use the fair trade gluten, blah blah blah. And one of those lasts like 5 or 6 bunches. The organic tea it's negligible. So individual costs, hello boo boo. Individual costs are 25 to 35 cents a bottle.
Excellent. So definitely worth making your own for that cost savings.
If you like it, it is worth it. It's a little work, but you find the ways to make it less work. Like if you do everything at one time, you make the tea, you do the fruit, you do the bottling all in one day. We're talking 2 or 3 hours. That's a lot. So the tea that's going to be going in here, I made it last night, covered it up, put it out on the porch. This I made 6 months ago and put in the freezer. Well, that's the other thing that you can do if you get your, make a big batch of a flavoring that you like, and then put it in bottles and put it in the freezer and then pull it out. So I had fresh peach for into December.
Mm-hmm. That's a great tip, Christine. I was going to ask you about freezing if that would explode in the freezer or not.
Well, this is just my flavoring mix. So
okay,
no,
so just the flavoring, but not the kombucha. Kombucha does not go in the freezer. For sure.
Well, you wouldn't put a soda in the freezer for long, would you?
Well, you never know. Or leave it in your car trunk. Don't do that either.
I wouldn't do that.
No. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christine. Everybody was glued to their screens and said you had a marvelous presentation. So thank you again. And we're going to let Tanya now start sharing her screen and audio. And thanks again, Christine.
Thank you. Bye-bye all.
Bye.
Oh, and message me if you want that list with the ingredients, the measurements, the ratios.
Yes.
Okay.